Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle Me in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. This video is going to be part 2 of the recent video I made on the book The Cause of World Unrest. In part 1 I read part of the introduction and then chapter 1 with some photos to look at, pictures, with some comments I had put in there. So part 2 will be chapter 2 and the rest of the introduction. And on chapter 2, I did it the same way I did it in part 1. I recorded my conversation and collected some pictures from Yahoo image site under the keywords French Freemasonry. So this is an interesting conversation, as well as it should be, for a book published in 1920 with the name of it, The Cause of World Unrest. So I guess the question is, what is the cause of world unrest, and is it applicable today for the things going on? And I think it does. So I'm reading from my another smaller laptop computer instead of a book because it is a PDF document. So bear with me with my clumsiness if it seems a little bit odd. So back to the introduction where I left off on the previous video. The cause of world unrest. Communism cannot be the nature of things to be the final end of their hopes and dreams. So these Freemasons, Illuminati, entities, if they're human or hybrid humans, seeking world domination, communism cannot in the nature of things be the final end of their hopes and dreams. They know better, perhaps, than the highest of high old Tories that it is not and can never be a permanent system of government. So even if they bring us this new age, new world order, it will not be a permanent system of government. And I firmly believe the deception is there. These people siding with the new age or globalism know not what they do. Indeed, in Russia, they have, by their acts, acknowledged that this is so. And in Russia, as well as France and China, millions of people died. Remember that for the USA. As for anarchy, it used to be a favorite subject among the old Russian nihilists, but it has disappeared from all political programs of the Reds and does not exist now, even as a political dream. There remains the dictatorship of the people. Luckily for us, it is not necessarily to ponder deeply over the meaning of this. Being an actual and active existence in Moscow, we can see exactly what it means, how it works, and the main results. The system of government, so alluring to the working man and so utterly inimical to his interest, is run by a very few men who have usurped authority and have regulated the working classes to a position of serfdom and are now working with all seriousness for the hegemony of the world, domination of the world, and 80% of them are Jews. Stuff people need to remember. This is 1920 when this author wrote the book, The Cause for World Unrest. I'll bet he never had a clue that 25 to 100 million Russians, Christians, and other good people would be murdered in the next 10 years. After 1920, And the whole world was oblivious to this. It would be unfair and un-English to argue this, that all Jews are Bolsheviks. But we may fairly say that the time has come when every country in the world is entitled to ask its Jews what policy they intend to pursue towards this new and alarming danger. This is seriously applicable to today, 2017. Here is a huge country of enormous resources and immeasurable wealth being run by a company of Jews on a system which can best be described as the denial of democracy. It aims at spreading the abominable theory throughout the world. This is the boast of their own men, not a mere statement. In every country are to be found representatives of Sovietism, Jew and Gentile, working feverishly and with excellent organization. This is true today, 2017. Some people are saying the two hurricanes that hit Texas and Florida were controlled, weather control. And if that is true, then they are working to bring about a lot of suffering to the American people. After the election of President Donald Trump, who seemingly is not going along with the global climate change propaganda, etc., and many other issues, as we all know. Back to the book. In England, we are seeing daily the results of the propaganda. Again, if you apply this to today, it's amazing. For something published in 1920. Bolsheviks have openly declared their intention to have a Soviet government, and they possess a paper, the Daily Herald, which is frankly and utterly Bolshevist. The political Jew who is working for his nation and not for his religion is active. He is everywhere working with extraordinary activity towards the furtherance of the Bolshevik plans. Call it the Zionist plans, communist plans, world domination plans, Jewish utopia plans, Jewish aristocrats. And it's not all Jews. A lot of Jewish people, famous Jewish people, are trying to warn us. It is not time to ask of our Jewish, is it not time to ask those of our Jewish fellow citizens who do not share the view of their fellows to speak out openly and fearlessly? So Benjamin Friedman did speak out openly and feverishly. So did other Jewish people. Rabbi Marvin Antelman, I made videos on his book. Henry McCall, PhD, Jewish author in Canada, who wrote the book Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world. The evidence is clear here. What's in this book, published in 1920, appears very true. And why haven't people paid attention? Who controls our world? The attitude of the English Jews is one of surprise that their religion should subject them to suspicion and differential treatment of any kind. They say, in effect, why are we treated differently from the Roman Catholics, the Waylands, the Methodists, the Church of England, or any other religious community? Recently, in the Jewish Guardian, March 26, 1920, the attitude of English Jewry was thus described: Judaism is a religion and not a nation. It was to Jews as members of a religious body that national rights have been vindicated at the press conference, and it is by Jews as members of a religious body that Judaism will be guarded. And I am reminded of the Balfour Agreement during World War I. World War I was from 1914 to 1917. And then the Russian Revolution was 1917, and this book was written in 1920. Anyways, there was a backdoor deal where the Jews in Germany apparently turned traitor on Germany, sided with Britain so Germany would lose the war that it was winning. So that the Jewish people, with the Balfour Agreement, had made a deal with Britain to annex the Palestinians' land for the creation of the State of Israel, as prophesied. Back to the book. These are admirable sentiments, most of which every tolerant and generous Englishman will endorse. But perhaps he might ask the meaning of the phrase. It was to Jews as members of a religious body that national rights have been vindicated at the peace conference. We presume that the writer intended to convey the idea that the peace conference insisted on the Jews of Romania and Poland having special rights because they were a religious community and not because they were a separate national entity. But later on in the same article, we have a remarkable passage which tends to prove that there are a large number of Jews who desire a distinct nationality for themselves, apart altogether from their religion. And it's so simple to look back from 2017 and to see what's happened, even like 9/11, to bring about the complete annihilation and destruction of the Arab countries in the Middle East. Back to the book. Now, is this the policy of the Zionists? Not to deprive Western Jews of nationality, but to acquire for such Eastern Jews as want it to the opportunity of developing a civil sentiment, repressed and held in check where they dwell? If so, we would ask them 4 questions. How far is this policy modified by the minority treaties enacted and to be enacted by the just desire to give them a fair trial? How do the Zionist leaders propose to inform their followers and others that Jewish nationalism outside Palestine is a mistaken term, without foothold in the present or justification in the past or security in the future? Number 3, are they willing that Palestinians of other races and other creeds should share with Jews the civil sense of Palestine? Number 4, how do they propose to conciliate the help and cooperation of many Jews in whose behalf we are writing, who, untouched as they are by political Zionism, are willing, even anxious, to assist in the restoration of Palestine? It is obvious then that there is a large and powerful section of Jews who cling to their nationality as much as they do to their religion. Indeed, the whole controversy in this matter boils down to the answer to the question, are Jews working as a distinct race or merely as members of a distinct religion? Let us try to seek the answer to this question from the Jews themselves. The Jewish Guardian is out and away the ablest Jewish paper published in England. We must bear testimony to its fairness, broad-mindedness, and general excellence. It must be remembered that it was founded only last year as a protest against the curious attitude of the other Jewish papers. In effect, it is an anti-Zionist and anti-revolutionary. It stands in rare contrast to the narrowness and bitterness of its Jewish rivals. Also, the Guardian commands the services of some of the best writers in British Jewry. In a leading article published August 6th of this year, it refers to the question of nationality. We have never disguised our conviction, unpopular in places though it has been, that Zionism, or more precisely, Zionist hotheads, as Lord Curzon recently described them, brought grist to the mill of those anti-Semites who pretend that Jews are dual nationalists. This confusion between the philosophical nationalism, which Mr. Leon Simon has expounded in a recent book, and the common nationality of the subjects of one ruler such as King George, has been as unfortunate as it is illogical. We still hold that wiser councils might have avoided it, and that Jewish leaders, jealous for the good name of other adherents to Judaism than the Zionists, should always have been careful to distinguish between the two uses of one word. Here we see the recognition of the accusation that the Jews are a nation and the attempt to meet it by Mr. Leon Simon. The Jewish Guardian is certainly up against the same accusation, and very gallantly, and we believe sincerely, tries to prove that Judaism is a religion pure and simple. Well, that's been the debate. Is it a religion or is it a race? And no matter where they live, they believe they have a nation, even though they didn't have a nation. They had a Zionist Congress. They had leadership. They were financially well-to-do wherever they had moved to all over the world because of their propensity to accumulate money and business and land, which accounted for the problems they had for the previous 2,000 years. They usually wound up getting too much of it and then treating all the other people like slaves when they didn't have a nation. And of course now they have a nation through backdoor dealings and deceit, the Balfour Agreement. And it's easy to look back from today, 2017, to all the other things that happened: World War I, World War II, 9/11, and so much more, espionage to obtain nuclear weapons. It appears that these aristocrats of the world, not all Jewish people, are behind this Illuminati New Age conspiracy, globalism, which doesn't make sense at all, to connect everything, that if one part breaks, the whole system breaks. How logical is that? Anyways, back to the book. But facts are against it, and alas, facts from its own pages. Sometime in June, the Maccabees honored Mr. Lucian Wolff at the Holborn restaurant by inviting him to a banquet. The event is described to the Jewish Guardian on June 11th. Here is the first sentence. Honor to whom honor is due, and all honor to Mr. Lucian Wolff, the man who fought for Jewish rights at the Versailles last year. And remember, the Versailles hearings and trials were overwhelmingly against the Germans. Something that was a complete disaster. There's no way the Germans could have recovered. Back to the book. Honor to whom honor is due. I read that. Now, what precisely do the words Jewish rights mean? If Judaism is a religion, was there any need to fight for its rights, since no country in the world offers any obstacle to the exercise of this religion by any one of its nationals? So we can conclude that the rights were political, and we see the Jewish nation at work. If Mr. Lucian Wolff receives the thanks of Jewry for fighting for Jewish rights at Versailles, then Sir Herbert Samuel will no doubt do his best to deserve the same thanks for his fight for the Jewish rights in Palestine. So Britain put a Jewish leader in charge of Palestine after World War I, when the world was trying to annex Palestine for the Jewish people. Later on, the same account, we come across another significant passage. Here it is. The second message was a letter from Mr. Israel Zagwell, pungent and self-reminiscent, but will truth at the bottom of it as usual. But with truth at the bottom of it as usual. The minority treaties were the touchstones of the League of Nations, that essentially Jewish aspiration. But the man behind the minority treaties was Lucian Wolff. I have italicized the description of the League of Nations as being that essentially Jewish aspiration. Was the establishment of the League of Nations a religious or a political question? Surely, by no stretch of the imagination or sophisticy, can the League of Nations be regarded as a religious matter. It was political, and again we see the Jewish nation at work. In returning thanks for the many kind things said of him at the banquet, Mr. Lucian Wolff's reply is thus described. Then came the sharing of the praise. First to the Alliance Israel, then to the Americans, then to the statesmanship and the goodwill of the conference itself. The Anglo-Jewish members of the delegation might claim that the first detailed plan of the minority treaties was their own. They discussed it with members of the Commission of New States, but the governing principle had first borne acceptance from them. My italics. By the Allied and Associated Powers and by the League of Nations, though in the excitement of hearing the main treaties all else might well be lost for the moment. He would remind them that the principle laid down in the preamble of the Labor Convention, which secured the rights of the working classes and guarantees them the protection of the League of Nations, recognized that the rights of minority populations were on exactly the same plane. Here is the political Jew at work for the Jewish nation. So this communism, Zionism, they play games with words. Make no mistake about that. There is nothing deserving of blame in this. If political and intensely national Jews care to combine as secure privileges and rights for their co-nationalists throughout Europe, they deserve well of Jewry, but the Jewish guardian must not talk nonsense of Judaism being only a religion. It may be that, but in addition it is a strong, active political force pulling strings in every country for the good of Jewry. And here we have the Anti-Defamation League working in 2017, even on YouTube, now censoring videos and controlling things. In the world, things are changing quickly in 2017. And I think all this stuff in this book, The Cause of World Unrest, is much related to it, part of the New Age and New World Order. It is here we join issue with those Jews who do not concern themselves with the political and national aims and aspirations of their co-religionists. We want to know how we are to distinguish from the good citizen Jew and the politically minded Jew who works for Jewry, right or wrong. In this country, there are many Jews holding important offices, political offices. We want to know for certain that if at any time British interest and Jewish interests clash, he will be British first and Jewish afterwards. And it's obvious from watching the news and the paper and all the goings on in the USA, there are many dual citizens in the United States. And who do they align their allegiance to? The United States or Israel? And it's pretty clear to me they align their allegiance to Israel. The politicians today seem to be controlled. Republicans, Democrats, representative, members of Congress, presidents. If we've ever been in trouble, it's obvious now we are. How are we to know this? Back to the book. I have shown, and this book will show, much more ample the great political activity of the Jews. Remember, this is written in 1920, and the name of the book is The Cause of World Unrest. And we have plenty of opportunity to look at the past 100 years to see that all this stuff is coming true. I've gone over a couple hundred books in Freemasonry and Satanism, watched thousands of videos, saved, documented tens of thousands of press releases, magazines. It's becoming clearer and clearer that there are some sinister forces operating behind the scenes, and we the people need to wake up, and wake up quickly. Back to the book. How are we to know this? I have shown, and this book will show, much more amply the great political activity of the Jews. Cannot the good Jew see that it is difficult for us to tolerate this uncertainty, especially with the world in its present state of unrest? Well, think about where it is today, oh my. We are gradually being forced to deny to Jews political office, unless we can be quite sure that it will be exercised on behalf of our country and empire, and not on behalf of the Jewish race throughout the world. And here in the United States in 1913, they took over our money supply, creating the Federal Reserve in secret, and hence they control the United States and the politicians because they control the money, as Mr. Rothschild said. I care not who governs the country, who the leaders are, as long as I control the money. And if I control the money, I control the countries. And apparently the Rothschilds and other Illuminati members control the money supply for countries all over the world. Even that book I went over, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, they went out of their way to put all the countries in debt to the point where they went bankrupt. And people who didn't go along, like presidents of Costa Rica, Panama, they were assassinated. President John Kennedy assassinated. So many other people that got in the way assassinated. Where will this lead us? Back to the book. We have seen at the press conference the extraordinary and most successful workings of the Jews among the delegates, and this book will prove that their efforts were almost entirely directed towards safeguarding purely Jewish interests. It is impossible not to be amused at the assertion of Mr. Lucian Wolff that the principle laid down in the preamble of the Labor Convention, which secured the rights of the working classes and guaranteed them protection of the League of Nations, recognized that the rights of the majority populations were on exactly the same plane. And again, I'm reminded of the sinister activities of trying to put the archway of Baal, B-A-A-L, which is the devil, in New York and London. And later on I found out through UNESCO of the United Nations, they were trying to put 1,000 of these all over the world. What the heck is going on? One would think that the satanic forces are in control of the world and trying to tell us something. Did these evil forces have a hand in controlling the weather? Like a lot of YouTube videos and essays and lectures and people talking on alternate website news? Some very powerful people are saying so. Back to the book. Taken to pieces, this means that in order to secure privilege for the minorities, i.e. the Jews, it was found best to camouflage this step under the guise of securing the rights of the working classes and guaranteeing them the protection of the League of Nations, that essentially Jewish aspiration. So did the Jewish people create the League of Nations, which didn't do what they wanted, so later on they created the United Nations, which has an occult meditation room, clearly involved with the secret societies. And they're planning Agenda 21 and so much worse, sustainability, supporting global warming. Where will all this lead? Back to the book. Or the working class of any other country. This is the Jewish peril, that a great number of Jews owning various nationalities. So you got Jewish people all over the world in high political place. And in some cases rising to great political power, are working for the rights of the Jewish nation. So you got Jewish people in high places in every country, all over the world, all working for Israel's supremacy. So it seems. If there should come some occasion to such a Jew, when the safety, honor, and welfare of the country of which he is a national are opposed to the safety, honor, and welfare of the Jewish nation, on which side will he throw the weight of his influence and power? So think about that. Today, this is 1920. This is 2017. Almost 100 years later. And if I have paid any attention, it seems like we are in big trouble. The powers that be that have part of the secret societies or the aspirations for Zionism, they are, no matter what country they are a citizen of, they're dual citizens now because of the laws of Israel. But where do they want to throw their weight to defend? That uncertainty is not lessened by the spectacle of the Jew Bolshevik government or by the remembrance of Jewish national activity in Paris and elsewhere. If by giving expression to this policy of alarm and suspicion that is felt by many of my fellow citizens, I am to be dubbed anti-Semitic by the Jewish press, then I am supposed I must put up with the epithet. But as long as I see the possibility of the interest of this country and the empire being risked by uncertain allegiances, so long as I continue to denounce it. H.A. Gwynne, the author, The Morning Post Office, August 1920. So the bottom line is, that was the end of the introduction into the book, The Cause of World Unrest. But no doubt about it, the last 2,000 years, 2,500 years, it is even acknowledged in the Encyclopedia Judaica and many other books I've gone over, that the Jewish people had a propensity, a natural tendency, a drive even, a thirst, a hunger to always accumulate money and get in positions of power, marrying into families, everything. And of course, not all Jews. There are Orthodox Jews. That's the big issue here. In my mind, one of them is you have to realize there are Jewish people who are God-fearing Jews, like many religions, and they see the satanic forces at work. And then there are some who have gone with the Kabbalah and mysticism and have intentional desires on being the aristocrats of the world. And strangely enough, apparently, according to Revelation 9 in the Bible, Jews who call themselves Jews but are not, we know that's there. And secondly, a lot of people are becoming aware of many of the Jewish people in Israel today and the world are not Hebrew at all. They're not DNA Jewish people. They were from the northern area around Poland, the Ukraine, Russia, Eastern Europe. They were Khazarians from Khazar. And they were a very barbaric people for thousands of years. And 1,000 years ago, they converted to Judaism. They're called Ashkenazis. And the original Hebrews are called Shepherdetics. So you have this battle between the Shepherdetics and the Ashkenazis, and the Shepherdetics are a small portion of Jewry today. And they're considered second-class citizens. According to the book, An American Jew Moves to Israel, Jack Bernstein, I made a video on that book. And in Israel today, the Ashkenazis are the superior, so they think, Jewish people. And there is this world mindset that these people think that they're better than the rest of us. So it seems from all the books I've gone over and from some of the evidence we can see going on in the world today. And I'll continue reading other books. Here's another one I need to do right away that tells even more details. The Secret Terrorist. How many U.S. presidents have been assassinated? Is more than you think. And by whom? It matches what's in this book, The Cause for World Unrest. So anyways, I did read chapter 2 and included some photos. And we'll discuss a couple of other issues in this video. I hope you're enjoying this research, trying to find the answers, who's behind the scenes causing all these chaos and anarchy and world uncertainty. It does seem, and somebody even told me the other day, that, Rick, the stock market's been going up and up. It's not sustainable. He goes, I think the powers that be are just capitalizing on it, and eventually they're going to pull out, and everything is going to sink like a rock economically. And then we see the thing with the hurricanes, and then we see the aggressive activity going on in Syria. So there's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot more talk on the New Age, the New World Order, White Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, and many other issues meant to divide us all so that these entities, human or hybrids, I'm not sure, interdimensional demons, fallen angels, I'm not sure, but I will continue to dig into it. So take a look at this second part of this video I made on chapter 2 and some other pieces of information. All right, I'm going to read from chapter 2 in the book, The Cause of World Unrest. And while I'm reading this, I went on to a Yahoo image site. Yahoo has an image site. You can put almost any word in there and get all the images. And the keywords I put in was French Freemasonry. So I copied a lot of those pictures to my photo processor and edited them a little bit. So while you're listening to me read from chapter 2, take a look at these pictures. I think pictures will tell us a lot. And the words from this book, published in 1920, will tell us a lot also. So let me begin reading. We have seen that the Illuminati are mentioned both by the Abbe Burrell and by Mrs. Webster as one of the prime movers of the French Revolution. Indeed, Miss Webster goes further and calls Spartacus, that would be Wusthof, the inventor of world revolution. And from what I understand, behind Wusthof was the Rothschilds with all their money. So that would be the Illuminati. Like Fritz Springmeier's book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati. I've made a video on that. I'll be making more on that book. Many different famous names in there. Rockefeller, DuPont, Collins, Russell, Kennedy. All right, back to the book. A careful study of Burrell, however, suggests that the Illuminati were only one of many sects that would be cults. Are they satanic cults, demonic cults? What kind of religion are they? Which worked with the same means for the same object. They're important chiefly because we know a good deal about them. This would be the Illuminati. Their archives were captured and published by the Elector of Bavaria. That makes them interesting, for we can study them. We can study the working of bees in a glass hive. So we can study them as we study the workings of bees. We found all their documents. But it is also a danger for we may be led by our knowledge of them to give them too high a place in the revolutionary hierarchy. We know that this formidable sect, so they call it a formidable sect. I can reinterpret that to be a formidable secret society or a formidable Luciferic satanic cult, whether their deities are Moloch, Baal, B-A-A-L, Ra, Osiris, Isis, Horus, the all-seeing eye on the dollar bill, and so many other names. Of course, pagan religion means a religion of many gods. So whenever I say formidable sect, just keep all that in mind, what they're talking about. So we know that this formidable sect had a hand in the French Revolution. And if anybody knows anything, the French Revolution was a very nasty affair. A lot of brutal murder. That's what they do after revolutions. Just like the Russian Revolution, a lot of brutal murder. World War I, World War II, 9/11, planned brutal murder. So we have to worry about the New Age and the New World Order today, 2017, September 12th. Anyways, back to the book. I like to toss my comments in here. We know that this formidable sect had a hand in the French Revolution. It was not the only sect. It is doubtful if it was the chief sect. Indeed, we shall see that when we examine it more closely, that it leads us into a blind alley. It entices us along in the most promising and alluring way, but it ends in a dead wall. So who is the hidden hand behind the Illuminati? Behind the Zionists, behind the people into the Kabbalah, the occult, the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians. Those are my words. Back to the book. We know a good deal about Adam Weishaupt. He was born in 1748. So more than 250 years ago. This has been going on. And at the age of 28 was professor of law in the University of Ingolstadt in Bavaria. We know that even before the early age, he had worked out the general lines of his system and of his philosophy. But there is one thing we do not know. Did he work out the system for himself, or was he inspired thereto by some unknown and unsuspecting teacher? We do know, by the way, that he was a thorough-paced scoundrel, for among his intercepted correspondence was a series of letters written by him to various initiates, imploring them to help him to find the means to destroy the unborn child of his sister-in-law before its birth should overwhelm him with disgrace. So I guess he had sexual relations with his wife's sister. Oh my. Back to the book. After such a confession, we are entitled to doubt if the philosophy he professed was the real motive of his activities. His philosophy need not detain us very long. It is the old familiar set of fallacies and unproved assumptions formulated some little time before the Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and long since exploded by historians on the one side and by men of science on the other. Liberty and equality are essential rights that man in his original primitive perfection receive from nature. Property destroyed equality. Governments and religions destroyed liberty. Therefore, to reinstate man in his original rights, it was necessary to destroy all religion, all civil societies, and all property. Did you hear what I just said? What I just read from this book? Liberty and equality are the essential rights that man in his original and primitive perfection received from nature. Property destroyed equality. So they're saying anybody owning any property is destroying equality. Government and religions destroyed liberty. So they're saying because we have a religion, a belief in God, or a government that stops people from speeding down the street, running over children, etc., that destroys liberty. So these secret societies intend to bring us liberty and equality back by destroying religion and governments and property rights. Just makes me wonder, what is it going to take for people to wake up to see what this is all about? Secret societies, communism, New Age, New World Order. Anyways, back to the book. This was to be done by secret organization. Yes, he prophesied, princes and nations shall disappear from the face of the earth. You gotta wonder what kind of entities wants to destroy reality as the way we know it, society as the way earth is today. And how much propaganda and lies and deception will they tell us? Seems like quite a bit. Yes, a time shall come when man shall acknowledge no other law than the good book of nature. So they want to bring back animalistic behavior in mankind, chaos and anarchy, and rule by the ruthless. Turn men into animals. This revolution shall be the work of our secret societies, and this is one of our grand mysteries. Wow, there's some crazy stuff they thought back then, and I think they think that today. Back to the book. It may be noted in passing that he uses plural as if he were aware that there were others working along tunnels similar to those which he and his confederates were digging so busily. So a lot of people who do any research now know there are many thousands of these New Age, New World Order, Masonic, occultic organizations. I've mentioned the names many times: Rosicrucians, Bilderberger groups, Bohemian Grove, Freemasonry, Communism, Zionism, banksters, elites, aristocrats, Zionist Jews. They control our world, and they seem to be readying the world for some huge calamity. Back to the book. He began with his pupils of Ingolstadt, the general idea being that each class of my order must be preparatory school for the next. He educated a class of insinuators, whose business was to secure initiates, and these initiates were only let into the secrets of the organizations when they were proved to be faithful and had gone too far to draw back. So again, as I've been saying all along, in all these Masonic organizations and other secret societies, they recruit a lot of people, and a lot of people all over the world have friends and family who join these organizations, Freemasons, Rosicrucians, etc., Illuminati even. And only those who proved to be faithful, as this book says, and had gone too far to draw back would probably be elevated. And these are the people who wind up being our senators and representatives and presidents and CEOs and the elites who govern our world. And even on the lower levels, they draw from these people that they can control to be our judges, our police chiefs, and many other people in positions of power. It's quite the setup here in 2017 that they have created. Back to the book. The scope of these designs is revealed in the following passage, which might almost persuade us that we are in the presence of a formidable sect. Just think about who is and what is this formidable sect? What about the symbols they use? Serpent, the devil, the sun, stars. Back to the book. When the object is a universal revolution, all the members of these societies, aiming at the same point and aiding one another, must find means of governing invisibly and without any appearance of violent measures, not only the higher and more distinguished classes of any particular state, but even all stations of all nations, of every religion, insinuate the same spirit everywhere, in silence, but with the greatest possible activity. Direct the scattered inhabitants of the earth towards the same point. So they're trying to pull us all into this new age. Make no mistake about that. Back to the book. With marvelous patience and cunning, Wusthof elaborated a secret organization, closely resembling Masonry, of 4 classes, subdivided into 6 degrees. Young men were tempted into it upon various false pretenses, and before very long, the organization had great power in Bavaria and other parts of Germany. Then came a great chance. Wusthof was fortunate in 2 disciples. Cato, I guess his name was Zach, and the Hoverian baron Philo, his name was Knight, who had dabbled in Freemasonry. And with these 2, he conceived the project of capturing or illuminizing the Masonic lodges. So 2 of his students turned out to be brilliant, cunning men, and they helped him take over the Masonic lodges. Back to the book. Wustof's instructions on the gentle art of capturing Freemasonry are interesting. In every town of any note situated within their district, the secret chapters shall establish lodges for the 3 ordinary degrees, and shall cause men of sound morals, of good repute, and of early circumstances to be received in these lodges. Such men are much to be sought after, and are to be made Masons, even though they should not be of any service to Illuminism in its ulterior projects. So they were planning on recruiting recruits in any country, any state, all over the world. And they were going to use them, but they would not be informed what the true purpose was. Back to the book. These methods succeeded beyond expectation. Wusthof and his initiates were soon in secret control of a multitude of lodges throughout Germany. So you see, Freemasonry, the lodges, before the Illuminati took them over, they might have been benevolent organizations or benign organizations that were not a threat to mankind. But I suspect after the Illuminati took them over, that all changed. But the great change came with the Universal Masonic Congress at Williamsbaden in 1782. I might make a point here that during these time periods, as per my reading from the Encyclopedia Judaica, they were having Zionist congresses all over the known world at that time too. So there were 2 forces which appeared to be controlled by the hidden hand: the Jewish Zionist movement, Bolshevik, Communist, etc., and the secret society, Masonic lodges, and all that, etc. And I believe they are controlled by the same hidden hand. Back to the book. At that Congress, Philo, Knight, was busy, and he gleefully reports his progress to his master. All of them, writes Knight, and I'm probably saying this guy's name wrong. It's Knigge. I call it Knight. Could be Niggy or something. were enchanted with our degrees of epoch and the regent. Into those degrees, the Freemasons were enlisted in shoals. So this recruiting of people into these degrees, promising them some illumination, some secrets, some growth in the social business, whatever, worked very well. Back to the book. The center of the conspiracy was now in Frankfurt and was spreading in all directions. The South German states, Prussia, Austria, Holland, were all infected. So the whole territory back then was known as Prussia. It included the German states, Austria, Holland, Poland, so much more. It was a huge area back then. Back to the book. A trusted agent was sent to London. The guy's name is Silly, I guess, to illuminize the English. Several of the German courts were almost completely in the hands of the Illuminati. Their prestige was becoming enormous. And FYI, this has happened in the United States. This is where we are today. Back to the book. But in the height of his success, Wüsthof received a staggering blow. The Elector of Bavaria swooped down upon him, obtained evidence, both written and oral, which filled Germany with horror and covered the sect, this demonic religion, with confusion. I believe this is the case where the courier was hit by lightning, one of the Illuminati Freemasonic couriers, a high-level person, and in his pouch they found documents professing, planning the New World Order, dominating the world. And interestingly enough, it coincides with the Zionist, Bolshevik, Communist, Jewish plan and the Protocols of Zion. So they did have this Illuminati manifesto, a Communist manifesto, Protocols of Zion, and a lot of collaborating information I'm reading in the Encyclopedia Judaica. Very interesting indeed. Back to the book. Wüsthof fled to another part of Germany, but his organization continued, and as we shall presently see, its agents and fugitives helped to precipitate the revolution in France, which they had failed to effect in Germany. And we know this was in the late 1800s, 1880, 1890. And then, of course, we know after this, they did manage to create World War I and World War II in Germany. So I guess in a way they did accomplish, albeit through a world war, the destruction of Germany. If people only knew the truth. Back to the book. We have said that our study of the Illuminati only leads us into the cul-de-sac, a blind alley. We come to Adam Wüsthof, and we get no further back. But at its other end, there's this blind alley, joins the main roads, or rather tunnels, of occult, Freemasonry, and revolution. So here we go. We get back into the Jewish historic Kabbalah, the Jewish historic mysticism, and the Egyptian ancient religion, philosophy with all the hieroglyphics, i.e. Zechariah Stitchin's, Planet X, Nibiru, Anunnaki, and so much more of this serpent reptilian alien type of reality we're all learning about today. So are these the forces behind the Illuminati, the Freemasonry groups, the Zionist, Communist, Jewish groups? What and who do they worship? The question we need to be asking. Back to the book. We find this filtration quite clearly in Marabout's visit to Berlin. Marabout returned from Berlin with two enthusiasms. Here we go. Right in this book published in 1920 the cause of world unrest. So Marabeau returned from Berlin with two enthusiasms, the one for the Jews and the other for the Illuminati. So as I keep saying, the Illuminati and the Jews who are bent on a world aristocratic dictatorship, and of course this does not include all Jews. There are Jews who are still religious, God-believing Jews trying to warn the rest of us. And also remember, we Christians, we believe Jesus was the Messiah, and Jesus was a Hebrew. So you could almost say a lot of Christians believe in a Jewish man who was born sent by God with the Holy Spirit. Kind of hard to make an anti-Semite out of a Christian if they worship a Hebrew. Back to the book. Of the former enthusiasm, we shall have something to say later. The later enthusiasm bore immediate fruit. Marabeau induced Emilius Bode, the disciple and successor of Spartacus Wusthof, to illuminize the French Masonic lodges. So they were taking over the French Masonic lodges, preparing for the French Revolution. Behind that was the Illuminati. Behind that seems to be some kind of other underground or interdimensional deities, beings, whether they're fallen angels, reptilians. I guess we'll see as we continue to investigate. Back to the book. There is no doubt that at the time, French Freemasonry was assuming certain very dangerous and subversive forms. France was, in fact, covered with a web of secret organizations of the Masonic type, and of these lodges, practically all the Jacobins were members. So that's rather interesting because I went into my book, Occult Theocracy, and I wanted to look up who the Jacobins were. So we'll look at that. All right, I wanted to do a little bit more investigation on some of these names and terms, etc. So in the middle of my chapter 2, I thought I'd take a look at this, talk about a couple things. Occult Theocracy, Lady Queenborough, Edith Starr Miller. I do have a series number for this book, 149. I've already been making videos on some of the material in this book. So some of the material in this book will be included in other videos. This is a very diversified investigation. I'm looking at everything. Mysticism, channeling, aliens, secret societies, Freemasonry, Zionism, communism, the occult, looking at my bookcase here, Theophist Society, psychic research, mysterious monuments all over the country, human auras, Illuminati, psychic warriors, the government testing biological weapons on us. This is series 150. I've got over 350 videos on YouTube, 500 hours of this research. Just trying to find out what's going on before the world expires. It seems like they want to do something very sinister to the world. From my observation, and the movies on TV, and the stuff in the paper, and all the threats, even threats of a nuclear war, biodiversity, economic collapse. I think we should pay attention. Movies like Hunger Games. Anyways, page 379, the Cause of World Unrest book mentioned Jacobins. So I thought I'd just read about it for a minute. Only a couple pages. All right. The Jacobins. The clubs or lodges of the French Revolution. The Bishop of Autun, Talleyrand, Marabout, and the Duc d'Orléans, Grand Master of the Grand Orient de France, founded a lodge in Paris in 1786, which was duly illuminized by Bode and Guillaume Baron de Buch. There was the Club Breton, which afterwards became known as the Jacobin Club, a name of Templar origin, recalling that of Jacques de Molay. La Forester in Las Illumines de Bavaria, Luminaries of Bavaria, and La France Marconi Almende gives the substance of a book written by Gartanner, quoting the latter as to the funds available at the date for revolution. In his Novelis Historias a Consideration Politica sur la Revolution Franchise, 1793. I like pretending to be able to speak French, although I speak a little bit of languages. Si hablo español, parlez-vous sprechen Sie Deutsch? Seems like I can say some foreign language words easier than I can say some English words. Funny how the brain works. All right, back to this book here. The Swiss Gartena, an ex-Freemason who had joined the ranks of the enemies of the sect. Is there some kind of satanic religious cults they call sect? States that from 1786 there had existed in Paris a propaganda club. Well, who would have thunk that? We have a lot of propaganda clubs going on in the world, in the USA right now, whose chiefs were then the Duc de la Rochefoucauld, Grand Master of the Lodge in the Rue Cogharon, Condorcet, and Sayaz, that the aim of the organization was to further the triumph of dogmatic atheism and create a great social upheaval. I'll read that again. The aim of the organization was to further triumph of dogmatic atheism and create a great social upheaval. When was this book written? Oh my. These are the things going on now that I keep mentioning. I can get all these books and the information collaborates each other. I'm trying to figure out when this book was published. (1933). Anyways, apparently back then the aim of the organization, the propaganda club, these Masonic organizations in France, to further the triumph of dogmatic atheism and create a great social upheaval. I guess I couldn't say that enough if people don't get it. It's where we are today. The members charged with spreading the propaganda of the subversive principles of the club numbered 50,000. So at that time they had 50,000 members. Let's see how far this goes. 1786. So 4 years later, so 1786 they had 50,000 members. 1790 it had 20,000 livres at its disposal. That was a lot of money. But by the end of 1791, those had increased to 30 million. So they had plenty of money and plenty of people. The conspiracy formed by Philippe of Orleans, Duc La Chartreuse, Masonic name Eglate, to overthrow Louis XVI was directed by Sillery and Marabout, and of the 605 elected members of the Terras Etat, 477 deputies were Freemasons. Revolutions cost money. La Haute des Pits, Pitt's gold had to go through some channel that would not compromise the English government, and in dealing with such a delicate matter as the fostering of a revolution in a foreign country. And we all know in the United States, if we want to admit it, the United States has been involved of helping to overthrow many countries. Not we, the people, the citizens. We are completely left out of the loop, most of us. But the people involved in secret societies or part of the other people who think they are the aristocrats of the world, they have a better DNA than the rest of us. They call us cattle or profane. They control our world, and they keep the people, we the people, deceived or distracted. And these two hurricanes we just had, September 12th today, 2017, will certainly keep everybody busy for a while. Besides causing some very interesting situations in the USA. It's a double-edged sword. It might create a lot of economic activity, a good thing, September before Christmas and all that. But on the other hand, can the insurance companies pay for all the damage? Will they go bankrupt? Will they pay? Will it cause a great calamity? And the bigger question is it all going to be planned? What if they can't pay? I mean, think about the billions and billions of damage. And of course, after they paid off the Twin Tower bill, they crashed the stock market and had to bail out all the banksters. Will that happen again? Is it part of the plan? So they can suck up billions out of the USA, and whatever bailout they do to these banksters, insurance companies, will be a burden will be put on the American people. That money doesn't come from anywhere. They borrow it from themselves, the Federal Reserves, the Illuminati that controls the Federal Reserves, the elites, and they'll loan it to our government to bail us out, and we still owe that money. Quite the little pickle we're in. All right, fostering a revolution in a foreign country. It was good policy to organize a similar movement at home, which, however, should remain abortive, being led by Lord Stanhope, Pitt's brother-in-law. So the Brits over there, some of the elitists, were financing the French Revolution and wanted to conceal the fact where the money was coming from. And it was through the Freemasonic and other Illuminati secret society organizations. Who would have thought that, right? After you start studying this stuff, the storyline becomes pretty understandable. You get to see what they're doing. To this connection, the history and failure of Wolfe Tone's Bantry Bay expedition is interesting. The history of the Terror in the French Revolution of 1793 is the history of lodges such as that of the Philippites, among whose members the following Jacobin leaders are known to us chiefly for their uncompromisingly bestiality. So they had a reputation for being beast, ruthless, murderous. Among the members of the Club de la Propaganda, I can't even say these names, so I'm just going to tell you there's a bunch of names here. I will show you and pause the thing so you can see it yourself. On the top where my finger is and on the bottom on the other side, these are the names. These are the names. So if you can pause that and look at it if you want to know these guys. Danton, Nicolas de Bonneville, Rabat Saint-Etienne, Ladane, Duc de la Rochelle. Among the members of the Amis de Notice, and there's more names there. According to Borel, Histories de Jacobinism, Volume 2. I like to pretend I can speak French. Page 446. The last mentioned lodge of the Amis de Notice appears to have been only the cover name behind the which operated the Comité Régulateur, or Central Committee of the Combined Lodges and Clubs. So here we go, secret societies. Think about the United States today. Council of Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, Heritage Foundation, Bilderberg Groups, Bohemian Grove, Club of Rome, so many. Anti-Defamation League, Jewish political actions, PACs, committees. They're the largest in the United States. They control our politicians. They control the money. The Federal Reserve is privately owned by these people. Like I keep saying, we're in trouble. People don't wake up. All right. An international organization, this is page 381, with foreign branches in America and Europe. The deliberations of this group of conspirators were sent to the Central Committee of the Grand Orient, from where they were relayed to the provinces, addressed to the various worshipful masters or presidents of the lodges. So does anybody want to tell me that the Freemasonic lodges and all these other secret societies, Rosicrucians, are not in on this? Aren't behind the scenes controlling it, bringing in people, planning events, White Lives Matter, KKK, White Supremacists, Black Lives Matter, women's marches, and so much more, gay right parades? The secret societies are behind all of this. And they intend on destroying the world as we know it. And maybe worse. It is seemingly satanic. You want to call the entities behind the scenes working with these groups from another planet? Go ahead. Want to call them another dimension? Go ahead. Want to say they live in the earth underground? Go ahead. I don't care. But apparently they exist. We need to wake up. This group, according to Burrell, was the central guiding committee of the revolution. The Club Régulateur is said to have numbered at least 50,000 500,000 brothers. Lafayette Lodge de la Candor, when he marched on Versailles at the head of 15,000 National Guardsmen and brought the king back to Paris, was already presumably fully informed of DuPont's plan of revolution. So I see the name DuPont here, and in Fritz Springmeier's book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati, there is a whole section on the DuPonts, as well as Rothschild, Rockefellers, Russell, Collins, Schiffs, Lee, so many more. If you can get that, I made a video on that book, number 9, if you want to go see the series 9. And I'll be looking at that book as well as my other books. All of them, again, making a part 2 or part 7 or wherever I'm at on each book. I'm going to comb this material to get to the bottom of the matter, so we can find out what is the matter. Who's planning our destruction, our death, our enslavement, our children, their children, their children? Where he himself, DuPont's plan of revolution, where he himself and Mirabeau had approved at a session of the Amos Ranus early in June. So this is a remarkable book here. You can go on a used book site or wherever and get it. While remarking that the vote for the death of the King of France, Louis XVI, was carried by a majority of 1, Penetel further states that in consequence of the certain irregularities in the balloting, some 5 votes for death were cast by unqualified persons, while 4 others voted twice. So they even had some crazy voting to decide to kill the King of France. After the storm of revolution had subsided, the power in France seemed to have been vested in the Comité des Sables, Okay, so they put these people, they said that were in charge, but the 300 who controlled France, and of whose power we read in memoirs of the time, these were 300 Masonic leaders. So these Masonic organizations, like the Council of Foreign Relations and so many more in the USA, CIA organizations, and apparently in the United States we even have a fully operating backup secret government really running things, non-elected officials, with whose goals they have, what goals they have, none of us know. They in turn were controlled by a small clique, is obvious. So even the people like President Donald Trump, Obama, Bush, anybody, Reagan, they're controlled by a small clique, is obvious. Even the 300 Mason leaders of the French Revolution of 1793 seem to have had their successors in modern history. Ranu mentioned them in his words. One of the most interesting episodes of the French Revolution was that known as the conspiracy of Balbouf. Balbouf formed the Society of Pantheon, which according to Professor Lasky was operated by a secret committee of direction. Who do you suppose these secret committees of direction are? Among them were some extraordinary men: Darth, Sylvain, Martial, Germain, Bardonati, who was to survive them all and be their historian. The particular brand of communism favored by the conspirators was based on the theory that the poor could not help themselves or improve their position, that the rich must be suppressed, and that the ideal state could only be reached by class war and a dictatorship of the proletariat, led by the Bolsheviks. Remember, this was published in 1933. I did look up proletariat. I'm probably saying the name wrong. But I thought it was very important for us to get the idea of who they want to control, who they think can't take care of themselves. And in the different dictionaries I looked it up, it was the wage earner. So if you are a wage earner, you are somebody who can't help yourself. They have to control you. If you are a working class person, and this is also referenced in Marxism, which is communism, and they consider we wage earners the lowest or one of the lowest economic and social classes. So there you have it, what they think and why they're doing what they do. So they say publicly. I think there's a much more sinister goal here. They want to enslave the world, run this planet like a big machine for their own personal satisfaction, and maybe in cahoots with some kind of fallen angels, Palladians, Anunnaki, people living under the earth in caves or cities or in the center of the earth or another galaxy. We'll continue to look at these different avenues of inquiry and try to find out. If you watch my videos, I'm persistent. Professor Lansky remarks that anyone who reads the voluminous light rapture of this period with attention and compares the habits it postulates with the operations of Bolshevism cannot help being impressed by the resemblance. And if you don't know, and if I haven't said it enough times, before they had World War I, in 1913, they secretly conspired with President Woodrow Wilson to create the Federal Reserve. They had to control America. They had to control our money. 6 months later, they started World War I. During World War I, Germany was clearly the victor, was winning. The elite aristocrats, Zionist, communist, Jewish people around the world saw an opportunity. The Jews had found safe haven in Germany For 100 years after fleeing Russia, they were thriving. They had found their Garden of Eden. And any Jewish people know this and had these sentiments. But they saw an opportunity to fulfill some kind of biblical prophecy, to get the Middle East, Jerusalem back and rebuild the third temple. So in the middle of World War I, some elitist Jewish folks went to the British government, Mr. Balfour and other people, and made a deal called the Balfour Agreement. So all those happy Jewish people in Germany who had fled Russia were not quite pleased with this decision, but they are a connected, nationalized community. And during the Versailles trials and hearings after World War I, the Germans found out, because right during the middle of the Versailles trial and hearings, the Jewish people stood up and said, okay, you have to fulfill your end, Britain. We want the Palestinians' land. And the Germans were like, oh my goodness, this is why we lost the war. And then right after World War I, through espionage in collusion with leaders all over the world, the same aristocrats who betrayed Germany, sent Lenin and other people into Russia to abduct the Tsar and his family and take over Russia and proceed to kill 25 to 100 million people. And of course we know they did the same thing to China. They've caused other wars, Vietnam, Korea, and then World War II, 9/11. And the more I continue to investigate, the more this is the story. And so people need to pay attention in Europe, in the USA, in the rest of the world. If these people succeed in crashing the system, the murder of people will be in the billions, probably. It's part of the plan. The Georgia USA Guidestones tell us they want a world population of 500 million. These elites. I don't know if they're reptilian or hybrids or whatever they are. And they control a lot of other people. But as many people on the planet today, if it's true, the number they say, 6 billion, it's too many people for them to manage or feed, or they don't want them around. I think the planet could take care of all of us quite simply. But the propaganda has been so intense that most people believe the lies. Sustainability, Agenda 21, droughts, plagues, crazy hurricanes, causing so much destruction and taking crazy paths. While in California, in the west of the United States, fires are raging like crazy right now. Weren't they raging crazy here a couple years ago? They keep attacking and attacking and attacking. And they're bringing us the 5G, 5th-generation cellular communication network, which promises to connect everything in the world that you can imagine. Go look up this document. And it clearly says in here they are not going to allow public input by some politicians who had received $20,000 in campaign contributions. You don't think there's a problem? Imagine if somebody were to stuff you or your baby or your dog or whatever inside a microwave oven and pour it on. You wouldn't like that. That's what this is. I have a degree in electronics. I worked at a major aerospace company 10 years. I remember the big microwave dishes. And there were big warning signs on the front of them and near them. Do not walk in front of the microwave dish. There are stories about people on ships at sea in the military getting too close to a microwave dish and getting zapped and killed instantly. On those cell phone towers, go walk up to one on the bottom. They have chain link fences around them. There's big warning signs all over them. So then I read this stuff. I get a little emotional when I realize what they're planning for we the people on planet Earth, so it seems. The Bolshevist movement, though suppressed by the Directory, in 1796 survives today, having successfully penetrated the English literary society called the Fabians, where its predatory principles pass for socialism. So I just thought it'd be interesting to find out who the Jacobins were and have this conversation in the middle of my chapter 2 on the cause of world unrest. So back to the second part of my chapter 2 video. Alright, back to the book. Under the normal rule of Grand Master, Philip Eglate, Duke of Orleans, were the lodges of no less than 282 French towns. Wow. There were, besides, 81 lodges in Paris and 16 in Lyons. And here in the United States, I've traveled from Florida to Maine to Santa Fe, Albuquerque, Flagstaff, and all over the country, North Carolina. And I'm here to tell you now, every town, every city has all these lodges. And that's how I believe they organize all these demonstrations, whether it's a gay pride parade or a white supreme group or a Black Lives Matter group. There are these secret societies behind the scenes organizing, paying for signs, websites, and everything. We certainly have a threat to the world as we know it. Back to the book. Every lodge sent its deputy to the Grand Orient, and every lodge had its president, whose duty consisted in forwarding the orders of the Grand Orient and in preparing the brethren for the orders which they were to receive. As early as 1776, the Central Committee of the Grand Orient instructed its subordinates to prepare the brethren for insurrection. Isn't that interesting? 1776, that's when George Washington and a lot of other high-level Freemasons were involved in the Declaration of Independence and the creation of the United States of America, the Bill of Rights, etc. This is what they were doing overseas. They were busy working here in America. But did those people like George Washington back then have benevolent goals? And were they later taken over by the Illuminati? And now they have malevolent intentions? There's some interesting questions we have to ask ourselves. We see that they took over the Freemasons overseas, in Germany and Spain and Britain. So how much control did they have over the Freemasons like George Washington and our founding fathers in 1776? Back to the book. They were to visit the lodges throughout France, to conjure them by the Masonic oath, and to announce that the time had at last come to accomplish their ends in the death of tyrants. So it's funny what they get the people to believe, the working class people. But you know, after these revolutions, the working class people, and many times after, wind up in a worse position. Burrell, English edition, volume 2, page 438, gives an account of the manner in which these orders were executed at Lille in that year. The officers of the regiment of La Sarre, stationed at that time, were many of them Freemasons, and these were invited to meet the agent of the Grand Orient, an officer of the artillery called Senility. In the grand speech, he told them that the universe was about to be freed from its fetters, and that the tyrants called kings were to be vanquished, and that the religion and kings were to give way to light, liberty, and equality. Light, liberty, and equality. So light, Lucifer is known as the light bearer. So is the light we are to be given coming from fallen angels? Demons? What kind of beings? Reptilians? Anunnaki? Palladians? Just like today, a lot of channeled material you can watch on YouTube videos or the channelers' psychics' websites, or even go to lectures and schools. Give way to light, liberty. Will they give us liberty by getting rid of government and religion so people can do whatever they want, as Aleister Crowley in the rule of law, the law of one? Do whatever you wilt. And equality, destroying property rights, communism. This stuff is all making sense to me, finally, after a few years. Back to the book. The officers were good Masons, but they were also loyal subjects of their king. They treated the message half as a disagreeable joke and half as an incomprehensible incident to be dismissed from their minds. So this high-level master from the Grand Orient gave them this speech that they were to be freed from their fetters, and that tyrants called kings were to be vanquished, and that religion and kings were to give way to light, liberty, and equality. And they were confused, but they didn't do anything. It sounds like today, with all this New Age and New World Order, even the powers that be admitting it, and so many people are falling for it. The rainbow agenda, globalization, white lives matter, black lives matter, gay rights. Divide and conquer is their tactics. Back to the book. But being bound by their Masonic oath, they did not report the incident to headquarters. Just like today, people are ignoring what they see, even if it's satanic rituals during Super Bowl halftime shows, Emmys, Grammys, tunnel openings, etc. Back to the book. While the Grand Orient thus organized revolution throughout France, various occult lodges had their parts in the movement. Thus, the Paris Lodge of the Coq Heron was the seat of propaganda. Well, we know they're doing propaganda now. And of course, they have a lot of advanced technologies now since Nikola Tesla. Radio frequencies, radio transmitters, HAARP transmitters, dumping chemicals in the sky, drugs, mind control, mesmerization, deception, lies in the newspaper, TV programs, Hunger Games movies. I could go on for a while here, but back to the book. Its chiefs were the Duc de la Rochefort, Condorcet, and Siles. And in 1790, they controlled funds of 20 million livres, or 900,000 pounds. That's more than 900,000 US dollars. And at that time, in 1920, that was an enormous sum. Barreau quotes the main principle to which they founded their hopes of a revolution. Just remember, they talk about it now. They don't get their revolution in the U.S. and Britain and the world. Apparently, they plan on bringing us a nuclear war. Whatever they do, will we see it coming? Whether it is a biological intentional plague, these are my words, a nuclear explosion in some harbor declaring martial law, a super stock market crash declaring martial law, more hurricanes. Were the last two hurricanes in Texas and Florida, were they weather controlled? A lot of people are saying so. Back to the book. Want and opinion are the two agents which make all men act. Let me read it again. Want and opinion are the two agents which make all men act. And I am very confident with the two hurricanes in Texas and Florida, People are doing things they would not normally be doing. There has been great destruction. So they're going to be in want, and they will be acting, and the government machine will be letting out the propaganda, blaming it on global warming, whatever. And people will have to form opinions, and will they be controlled opinions? So back to the book. Cause the want and government opinions, and you will overturn all the existing systems, however well consolidated they may appear. Isn't that interesting? This is written in this book, The Cause of World Unrest, published in 1920. 100 years ago almost. Now Burrell quotes this revolutionary maxim on the authority of one Dr. Gertaner, who, he says, had been able to penetrate the secrets of revolutionary masonry in Paris. Was it acted upon? Everybody knows that one main cause of the revolution in Paris was the scarcity of bread. Think about this for today, 2017. Back to the book. The scarcity is usually said to be due to a bad harvest. Mrs. Webster, however, quotes many authorities to show that the scarcity was aggravated by the deliberate action of certain people who bought and held up the grain. Today, these activities could be weather control, could be money control, could be terrorism, 911, could be false flags, shootings, bombings. There's a lot going on. Education in the school system, disruption of the medical system, so much. These people, in her view, were agents of the Duke of Orleans and of what is called the Orleanist conspiracy. Today we call these organizations Heritage Foundation, Council of Foreign Relation, Bilderberger Groups, Club of Rome, and so many more. A lot of people are waking up. Back to the book. Montjoie, says Miss Webster, asserts that agents employed by the Duke d'Orléans, today we use names like Rockefeller, Rothschilds, Morgan, and so many others, Gates, Turner, deliberately bought up the grain and either sent it out of the country or concealed it in order to drive the people to revolt. Can you see this happening today? The stuff they're doing? And in this accusation, he is supported by innumerable contemporaries, including the Democrat Fonte des Odoros, Montyor, these names kill me, whose integrity is not to be doubted, the liberal Montluc, and Flores, and Madame de la Tour de Pin. Baudelaire, however, one of the most reliable of contemporaries, considers that the Orleanists would have been unable to create a famine by these means, but that they accomplished their purpose by stirring up public feeling on the subject of monopolizers, thereby inducing the people to pillage the grain. The farmers and corn merchants, therefore, fearing that their supplies would be destroyed in transit, were afraid to release them. By this means, a fictional famine was created. And I do know if they control the weather and brought us these hurricanes in such a destructive fashion, it's going to interrupt the oil refineries and so much more. Prices are going to soar in the United States. Stock markets might go up or down, depending on how they're planning things. I can see people, this is me speaking, having to buy a lot of stuff to repair their homes and property. So putting your money into big companies that own Lowe's or Home Depot, etc., might be a good idea. These people may have already put their money in those places after driving down the stock market weeks earlier that's been in the news. Could it all be a insidious plan, like people who took advantage of the stock market during 9/11, etc.? And throughout history, this has happened. Even over there in Europe, I believe the Rothschilds, after Napoleon lost the war, or won the war, whichever the case may be, they sent fake information to England, Britain, and the stock market had plummeted, but the Rothschilds were there to buy everything up when the true news came in. This has been going on a long time. Back to the book. Here at least is evidence that makes Gertaner's statement credible. He states that the secret societies planned to create scarcity. Contemporaries believe that scarcity was created, but put it down not to secret organizations, of which they knew nothing, but to the Duke of Orleans. As to the other economic cause of the French Revolution, the spell of bad trade and unemployment, it was produced by Eden's Treaty, a commercial treaty so disadvantageous to France that it was ascribed by contemporaries either to corruption or treachery. We know a lot of people are aware these things are happening today. Here also, Gertaner's statement furnishes a clue which might be worthwhile for the student to follow up. And like I say when I make these videos, don't believe a thing I say. Go online, get the PDF book for free like I did, The Cause for World Unrest. Go to a used book site, find it, buy it. The things that are said in this book, don't believe them. Look them up, do some research. Watch some of my 500 hours of videos or other people's videos. I am confident that anybody who looks into it is probably going to find out this information is fairly correct. Back to the book. What remains certain is that the economic crisis which preceded the revolution was intensified, if not created, by artificial causes. Again, we can see that these things are going on today. We know they want a new age and a new world order. They are discrediting Christianity, calling Christians haters. How bad will it get? Why did the government purchase 30,000 guillotines? Why are they trying to destroy religion? If people don't swear allegiance to this new coming religion, as prophesied, by the way, this Luciferic religion, they are to be beheaded, as is prophesied. People need to look this stuff up. Back to the book. That these causes were part of a conspiracy to bring about revolution is not certain, but possible and probable. But to return, among the Arai lodges, in whose shadowy sanctuaries the revolution was plotted, we must mention the lodges of the Amiss Ruinus and the Philatius. The latter was the haunt of those philosophers and dabblers in literature who in all ages are the easy prey of their vanity. The former sheltered such political fanatics as the Consort, the Brissot, Danton, Saint Martin, Salvalette de Lange. It was to this retreat that Montaigu brought Aemilius, Bode, the Baron de Bosch, and the other Illuminati who were Illuminized. French Freemasonry. But French Freemasonry hardly required illuminization from Germany. The work had already been carried through by kindred spirits, if not by fellow conspirators. Among these shadowy and sinister figures were the notorious Count Castillejo, probably saying that wrong, whose real name was Joseph Balsamo, a practitioner of all forms of magic, alchemy, and fraud in the Count of Saint Germain. So again, I've been mentioning this word to describe these things for quite a while. I call it witchcraft, so people can understand it. In the Count of Saint Germain, a theophist, as we shall now call him. So remember, the theophist, Howell and Blavatsky, The Secret Doctrine, and so more, Isis Unveiled. They had the Lucifer Publishing Company and the Lucifer magazine. And even Albert Pike in Freemasonry says Lucifer was their deity. It's funny how all this stuff comes together, but it's so unbelievable, people don't want to believe it. Back to the book. And the Count of Saint Germain, a theophist, as we shall now call him, who boasted that he had lived through several incarnations. And if you've been paying any attention to the YouTube or alternate website or psychic or mediums or channeler websites, a lot of them talk about incarnations. It was this impostor who founded the sect of Adamites. So another type of a cult called Adamites. Some little distance outside Paris, in which, according to Borel, the two sexes lived in promiscuous concubinage. So I guess they had groups of people, male and female, with open sex. Only one lady being reserved as the particular property of the founder, then, according to his own reckoning, in his 130th year. So I guess they had this master who said he was 130 years old, and he had one lady reserved for himself as property, and all the other people had promiscuous concubinage, I guess group sex or pansexualism, anything they wanted to do. Back to the book. Nor should we forget Martins Pasqualis, generally reputed to be a Portuguese Jew, who founded his order of Cone with a program which owed something to the ancient mysteries of the Kabbalah. Oh my. I did create this series called Freemasonry and Satanism. It's been an interesting trip for 4 years and 13 years of reading books. It seems to be connecting the dots more often lately. Pasqualis and his successor, Saint Martin, worked in France on very much the same lines as Wusthof worked in Germany. So the Illuminati had agents everywhere. The Illuminati has agents all over the United States. The Illuminati, Rothschilds, Rockefeller, etc., Morgan, and many other of these bloodlines of the Illuminati people took over the USA money supply in 1913, December 21st, during Christmas holiday. And 6 months later, they started World War I. And after that was finished, they did the Russian Revolution. And then after the world powers would not give these Illuminati, Zionist, Communist, Jewish folks Palestine, they had to have World War II to bring about this new world order. This is me speaking. And according to Albert Pike's letter to his friend Mazzini in Italy, they are going to have 3 world wars to bring about this new age and new world order. Everything's coming together. Back to the book. Indeed, the more we look at this 18th century network of secret conspiracy, the more probable does it seem that they all owed something to a common inspiration at that time and up till now, suspected but unknown. So they all had a common inspiration, but still unknown. With all these satanic rituals and symbolisms out there, you'd think a lot of people would wake up. When the revolution came, some at least of these secret workers emerged. When the revelation came, some at least of these secret workers emerged from their shadowy sanctuaries and came into the open. The Jacobins, were not only initiates themselves, but ruled their affairs in a ghastly imitation of the Masonic order. It is not by chance, says Burrell, that the Jacobin clubs, both in Paris and the provinces, became the general receptacle for Rosicrucians, Knights Templars, Knights of the Sun, Knights Kodash, and of those in particular who, under the name of Philotheist, were enthusiastically wedded to the mysteries of Swedenborg, whether at Paris, Lyons, Avignon, Bordeaux, Grenoble. We'll be looking at the Swedenborg, the Grand Orient, the Jacobins. The list is public, and it contains the names of all the profound adepts who had hereunto been dispersed among the lodges. Were they the real plotters of the revolution, or were they too puppets who danced obediently to the guidance of an unseen hand? Their fate suggests their role, for all and nearly all of them died under the guillotine, carrying with them their dark secrets to be buried forever in the quicklime of the general fosse. So where are we today? Isn't it interesting to see the past? Well, I hope you found this video informative. A lot of people tell me they know something's going on, but they're not quite sure. And the story is so crazy, it's hard to believe. So I do need to thank people for sending me the information that this book even existed. This is a Series 150 Part 2, a milestone in my video production process. 350 plus videos, ending 4 years this month of making videos. So what am I going to do in the future? I've got about 1,000 books, and I've probably gone over about 200 books in the first 150 series, 350 videos. So I could be doing this for a long time, but I have to make some decisions and changes. One of them is monetary, money, of course. I've paid for this process of producing videos, buying books, and researching for 13 years out of my own savings and assets. But that has to change because the savings and assets are gone. So I do need some financial donations, or I have to come up with some other method of making videos and have subscribers to a website if they want to see my videos, or stop altogether and try to put a book or two together, some other material I can sell, or stop my investigation completely. So there is a link below in the comments section. You can cut and paste it into the URL address field of your internet, and it takes you to my PayPal donation account. Or leave me a comment that you are interested in helping me, and I'll answer you back. Or go to my website, rickmiracle.com. On the top right hand side is a donation location. Takes you to my PayPal credit card, debit card. But I do need some assistance. I've been at this 13 years, and I'm running out of my own resources to continue. And it's a decision-making time with a couple milestones. I believe I've convinced myself what's going on in the world, what I was seeking, and I've put the material free on YouTube, which is creating some small disturbances in the other people's as well as mine videos. So it's time to make some decisions. But I would like to keep doing what I'm doing. But as usual, it boils down to what am I going to do? Am I going to quit altogether and go back to my business and focus, which I have no doubt I could be hugely successful again? Or should I keep making the videos? Anyways, there's a comment section below. Let me know what you think. And this book, The Cause for World Unrest, was a book I discovered in PDF because one of the commenters told me about it, as well as many other books that y'all have told me about, that I have to get to those books, but I can only do one thing at a time. So thank you for watching my video, Rick Miracle reporting.